Coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmet's casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Tick the tech. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, recruit. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just drop. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires outworking competition. There's always more sharp, more natural to get to come around.
Welcome in. This is FantasyFling with DFS Army. We are looking at cash game lineups. We're doing a weekend review for cash games specifically to see what cash this week, what you can take forward, what you can learn. So let's first off, let's look at what didn't cash. Let's start there. So not a terrible lineup that didn't cash. Let's go a little bit back. So I kind of want to just kind of spell out some of the decisions, the bad decisions that people make in cash that can lead to your lineup not cashing. So this is something that if you're a DFS Army VIP, when I do the cash game breakdown each and every week, I'm going to kind of tell you some of the things that you really should avoid, some of the landmines in your cash lineup that you should avoid. Oftentimes people get confused. What may be a good lineup for a tournament, they put it to the cash game lineup. Cash game lineups, you don't want a lot of variance. You want a lot of good chalk. You want players in good matchups who project really well. And you want to kind of avoid some of the things that are a lot of high variance that people may not know are high variance if kind of to your casual player. So for those who may play double tight end, for example, there's a lot of variance at double tight end. So what you don't want to do typically is you don't want to pay up a tight end. If you can, you want to pay down. Now, there are times when you do want to pay up a tight end because it's an extremely good matchup and because you're not paying all the way up. And, maybe there's not really good value plays at tight end that week. So maybe there's great running back value plays or great wide receiver value plays that you can jam in there. And maybe you can afford to play a TJ Hawkinson, for example, that week. So for me, you never want to play double tight end in cash. And specifically, you don't want to play double tight end in cash unless one of them is named Travis Kelce. So for example, here you got a double tight end and then you got a 1% owned guy, which smart play. But between the two here, you could have done certainly a heck of a lot better if you just played Durham Smythe and you'd play Tank Dell, for example. Another thing, KC defense, only 2% owned, and you paid up at defense. So these are the kind of mistakes you don't want to make in your cash lineup. You want to try to pay down at defense. You want to try to pay down at tight end, and you're not going to have a ton of variance in your cash builds where, you're struggling to beat the rake because you also just struggling to cash most weeks to actually beat half the field, but you're also struggling to beat the rake. So the rake is something you have to keep in mind as well. Overall, the lineup, more mistakes here. Robert Woods, you don't want to play Robert Woods. He's 3% owned. A decent tournament play for sure. But you don't want to, you got three guys here. So 3%, 1%, 2%. This is just, there's a reason why these players are low owned. You maybe want to play one low owned player. You want to eat all the good chalk that you can in your cash games. If you look at the start of this lineup, pretty good. Kirk Cousins, Josh Kelly, Jerome Ford, low price guys here at running back, high owned. Jerome Ford, not in a good matchup, but a good play, good offensive line. Josh Kelly, again, as I'm going to get into, not the best play, really. just because he hadn't looked very good, but it didn't really matter because 57% of the field played him and he was only 5,400. So he didn't hurt you. A lot of people cashed with Josh Kelly in their lineups, myself included. Justin Jefferson, Keenan Allen. So this is a very good start here, but it's really just the rest of the lineup that crushed it. And it's 164 points. This kind of week was actually pretty low scoring for cash. Most weeks, 150 points will do it, but didn't do it here. So the lineups that did cash. So we're going to go right to the cash line here. So really just a 2-point difference. But you see the differences between this lineup and that lineup, small in points, but there's some pretty key differences. So we got Kirk Cousins. We got Zach Moss, who we knew was going to get the bulk of the carries. He became cash viable once we knew Deion Jackson was released. He smashed last week. The week before, he got 18 carries. Deion Jackson was released. And then, so we know he has a backfill to himself. And obviously, Richardson is out. He's been ruled out with concussion, so we don't have to worry about the Richardson vulture. So I think Zach Moss was a pretty strong cash play. He was only 5,500. Kirk Cousins, we were all over at DFS Army. Great cash play. Great game environment. Highest projected own on the slate. And obviously, that salary pay down from, the 7 to 8K guys allowed you to fit in Justin Jefferson. It allowed you to get Mike Williams, the Tony Pollards in your lineup, and so on and so forth. Same thing here. So this lineup cash, and this is kind of just an overall principle I want to tell people. When you have a guy who is maybe he's not a very good running back, but he's in a good spot. He's in a good game environment. And he's only 5,400, so he's cheap. And he's projected to be the highest owned or, one of like 3 highest owned backs on the slate. It does not hurt you when this player ends up getting 57% owned. More than half the field had this player. So if you didn't cash, it's not because Josh Kelly crushed your cash lineup. It's because every other decision you made with your cash lineup, you're playing Josh Kelly so that you can afford Justin Jefferson, who scored 30. You're playing him so you can afford Mike Williams, who scored 28, at 6,000. So that's why you do that. And there is a bit of a safety net there with more than half the field playing Josh Kelly. So just keep that in mind. We're trying to find some value plays, some high owned plays, and they did project well. We're trying to do that knowing that we're going to be able to jam in studs like Justin Jefferson and Tony Pollard, who combined for almost 50 points, because that is going to be how you going to need the high 4 plays for your cash lineup. I'm sorry, this always goes off when I'm in the middle of a live broadcast. That's the type of floor players you need. Tank Dell, we had identified this over at DFS Army this past week. He had gotten 10 targets the week before. So at 3,600, they didn't even raise his price really from the prior week. He had gotten 10 targets. He was in a great spot. So we love Tank Dell. And he got even more targets and absolutely smashed at 140 yards and a touchdown, 28 points. Durham Smythe was a fantastic play based on the matchup. The Dolphins scored over 70 points, and he was low priced, and the Broncos had never been good at covering tight ends. Jalen Waddle was out. Those targets had to go somewhere. Well, the problem ended up being was that the Broncos couldn't stop the run. So the Miami Dolphins just ran on them all over all day. So Durham Smythe didn't get as many targets as he should have. If Denver had actually been able to make some tackles, this could have been a much better play. But overall, this is why you pay down at tight end. This is also why you don't play double tight end, because it's just a bad position. There's a lot of variance. And of course, you get a guy in a great spot. He's 2,900. He's almost minimum price, and he only gets 2 points. So, and then Tony Pollard, we know the volume was there. Rico Dowdle's getting a little more carries than I like. So, that's something we'll have to probably revisit for cash play consideration in the future at $8,000. But in this matchup, and what should have been a positive game script, These teams can be hard to predict, but should have been a positive game script. He should have smashed. He didn't. That's how it works. But, kind of as we talk about here, Washington D, 2,400. I wouldn't have played them going against the Bills, but they ended up being pretty high owned. So it didn't hurt him that much. Almost a fourth of the field had him. So that's how that works. So I'm going to finish up here with my cash lineup that I more or less spelled out for DFS Army subscribers. If you are not a DFS Army VIP, you should be, because we've cashed 3 weeks now in cash games. I drop my video every Saturday after we get the injury news. We start to see some more accurate ownership projections, and we start to navigate through the slate and pick some high floor players that we know are going to get us there. So even when, like I said, we miss on a Josh Kelly, we miss on a Durham Smythe, we still hit the cash line, but over 11 points. Because we are playing those high floor, high owned players, eating all the good chalk that we can. So use code FantasyFling for 10% off a VIP subscription, so you can cash each week in cash. Like I said, Cousins, Pollard, Kelly, Mike Williams, Drake London, Tank Dell, Durham Smythe, Justin Jefferson. It was going to be very difficult to play. You really had to make a decision whether you wanted to play Tony Pollard or you wanted to play Keenan Allen, because you couldn't fit Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Justin Jefferson and Tony Pollard. You couldn't fit all those four in the same lineup and not completely punt at quarterback, which for quarterback, that is the spot I don't want to punt at. I might do a little bit of a pay down compared to the elites in a good matchup like a Cousins, who has a ton of weapons, highest projected game environment on the slate. That is something I might do. I don't want to punt all the way. So these are the kind of decisions you have to make. But I was comfortable getting pieces of this game. And normally I don't force stacks, but when it lines up, when we got value, when the game environment's right, when we got two defenses that I know are not elite defenses, and there's few paths that I see that the game fails, that's when I will certainly have some stacks in your cash games and just getting the value where you can, eating the chalk. And as you can see, lots of chalk here. Only one player that was low owned. Overall, the lineup was extremely chalky, and this was just a value play that didn't get there because Desmond Ridder is terrible. So is what it is. But overall, this is what we're looking for in a cash lineup. The Bills D, we identified smash. There was no way I was not playing them in this matchup, and they ended up being highly owned. So the field agreed with me. And that's going to do it, I think, for this week. So we will be back next week to review our cash lineup. Like I said, if you're a DFS Army VIP, you have access to this each week on Saturdays when I drop it, as well as my cheat sheet. So use code FantasyFling for 10% off a VIP subscription. Hope you all cash again this next week. We will see you next Monday.